Factor the following trinomial, negative 33p squared minus 6p plus 18p cubed. At least factor it if possible. So I look at this polynomial, and the first thing that pops out at me is that it's not written in descending powers of p. I usually like to look at my polynomials in descending powers, right? So I'd like to have this term appear first instead of last, followed by that term, followed by that term. Another thing that pops out at me is I got a p in each of these three terms. So I'm going to be able to factor out a common factor. I'm going to be able to factor out a p. More than just a p, right? 33, that's 3 times 11. 6, that's 3 times 2. 18, that's 3 times 6. I can pull a 3 out. So I'm going to be able to pull out a 3p. And I also want to go ahead and rewrite the order that I have these terms in. So I'm going to write down my 18p cubed next. Of course, I've taken a 3p out of this. I take a 3 out of 18, it leaves me a 6. I take a p out of p cubed, it leaves me a p squared. Next, I want to write down my next highest order term, this negative 33p squared. Of course, I'm taking a 3 out, so 3 out of a negative 33 leaves me a negative 11. I'm taking a p out of p squared leaves me a p. And then finally, I'll write my last term here. Of course, I'm taking a p out of this, so I'm left with a negative 6. I'm also taking a 3 out, so I'm left with a negative 2. So here is a little bit nicer form of this polynomial. It's written in descending powers. I've already factored some of it out. I have this 3p out. As an added benefit of having factored this 3p out, I now have some smaller numbers to work with here when I'm trying to figure out more factoring. If I hadn't pulled that 3 out, then I'd be working with a 18 here and a 6 here. And in order to do this factoring, I'd probably be wanting to look at the product of 18 and 6, or 18 and negative 6 rather, and that's rather daunting. Something that pops out a little bit more to me at this point, which maybe it doesn't pop out to you, is that 6 times 2 is 12, which is awful close to 11. And what that tells me is that maybe I can just write down an answer right away. I know that I still have this 3p. This thing I'm thinking might factor as 6 times p. Let me write this a little lower. Oops, erase that so I have more room. I'm thinking it might factor, I'll write it up higher, I guess, as 3p times a 6p. And I'll put a regular old p there, and I want to multiply my 2 times my 6. That gives me a 12. I like it to be a negative 12. And then I'll add to it 1p. So 6p times p gives me my 6p squared. 1 times negative 2 gives me my negative 2. And then I have a 6p times negative 2, so I have a negative 12p plus a p. That gives me my negative 11p. So maybe we can jump right to the answer. But let's not assume that we can jump to the answer. Let's go ahead and try and figure that out by another means. We have another means, right? We look at the product of 6 and minus 2, negative 12, and try and come up with factors of negative 12 that sum up to be negative 11. Well, factors of negative 12 that sum to negative 11 happen to be negative 12 and positive 1, right? So I know that negative 12 times p plus 1 times p equals negative 11p. So that tells me how I can rewrite negative 11p. I'll rewrite it this way. So let's do that. So instead of 6p squared minus 11p minus 2, I'll write 6p squared minus 12p plus 1p minus 2. And now I'll do some grouping. So let me go ahead and draw in some grouping symbols. Let's group the first two pieces together and the last two pieces together. And out of this first group, what do we have? I still have this 3p hanging along. Out of this first group, I got a 6p in both terms. Let's factor that out. What am I left with? I pull a 6p out of this. I have a p. I pull a 6p out of this. I'm left with a minus 2. Plus, what do I got here? Well, just a p minus 2, no common factors. And I got a p minus 2 that shows up in both places, so I can factor that out. So I still have this 3p hanging around. I factor out a p minus 2. What am I left with? I got a 6p. Plus, there's a 1 in there. Don't forget your 1. Plus a 1. And this thing happens to be the same thing that we came up with up there, right? So either way, we get the same answer. This is our factored form. It was possible.